If your literature review looks like a list of quotations, author A said this, author B said that, and author C said something else, it's not analysis. You're just a parrot repeating what others have said. But let's be honest, we've all copy-pasted text from an article into a Word document and hope that by magic it would turn into analysis. This happens because many students have been taught how to reference, summarize, and quote, but most were never taught how to analyze. And therefore they keep doing the same mistake again and again and again. Today, I'll show you how to build your own analytical structure, step by step, which in practice means to build meaning and structure our thinking based on multiple sources. The inspiration for this video comes from a recent group dissertation support session where one of the students submitted a section based on the minority stress model. He listed mental health outcomes as sub-themes straight from the original paper. It was clean, properly referenced, but completely descriptive. This one example reveals a habit that I've seen in dozens of drafts. In this video, I'll show you how to move from description to analysis, because every top-grade literature review has a structure that is unique to the dissertation. By the end of this video, you'll not only know how to spot descriptive writing, but you'll know exactly how to build your own literature structure. Let's turn this simple list of mental health outcomes into a multi-level analytical framework. Let's move to the computer. So we start with the 5 mental health outcomes by Meyer 2003. The list is a useful list of outcomes, but it is not analytical yet. So what do we do with it? Step 1 is about isolating themes. And this step is important because we have 2 bullet points containing 2 themes each: depression and low moods, and stress and anxiety. Depression and low mood are connected, but they are different themes. And the same thing for stress and anxiety. In this case, what we are going to do is to separate each theme, thus creating a 7 bullet point structure. Let's do exactly that. So we have depression and low moods as 2 different themes, and then the same for stress and anxiety. So basically, we end up with a 7 bullet point structure. Now that we've isolated each sub-theme, we can move on to step 2, which is to identify the central theme. And the top-level theme which the list refers to is stressors. We could see that from reading the paper. So what we're going to do is to add stressors as the key theme. And we move everything a notch down in the order. We can also reevaluate the key subconcept, or in other words, what about stressors we are covering. In this case, the theme represented in the list is outcomes, not mental health. So what we are going to do is to correct our structure to reflect that. So let's go here, let's remove mental health for the time being. We're going to need it in a minute, and we have our revised structure. But we didn't stop here, and in step 3 what we do is to add sub-themes. So if we analyze the outcomes, we see that our initial list refers to a type of outcomes. In this instance, mental health outcomes. So what we are going to do is to actually move that up and move everything forward 1 level. This next step is where it gets interesting, so keep watching, because this next step transforms your structure completely. Mastering the literature review requires developing strong literature analysis skills. I have created a free literature review masterclass to help you develop your literature review skills. Details are in the description below. Step 4 is about breaking down the structure further. When we have a long list of something, like in this case we have a list of 7 mental health outcomes, we should try to categorize them into themes. As I often say, I don't like long lists of anything, simply because they are descriptive. In order to transform this list into analysis, what we have to do is to categorize the initial descriptive list. And this requires looking at the list and find commonalities between some of the items in that list. If we look at the list, we see that 2 items refer to the same theme, and they are positive coping mechanisms and negative coping mechanisms. So what is the main theme here? It should be fairly straightforward because it's quite explicit. And the key theme here is coping mechanisms. And then what we have is 2 types of coping mechanisms, positive and negative. And we no longer need that text there. We can identify another theme that covers the 4 first items. In this instance, the theme is not there explicitly. We have to infer it. So I'm going to ask you a question. What binds together these 4 mental health outcomes? Can you figure it out? What I'm going to say, it's my interpretation. And as long as the interpretation is fair, it should be accepted. And in this instance, my interpretation is that these are emotions. Depression is an emotional state, low moods is an emotional state, as is stress and anxiety. So I'm labeling it, I'm seeing commonalities between some of the subthemes in this case, and I'm giving it my own theme. We are left with one outcome, which is body image concerns. And in this case, we can neither classify it as emotional nor as a coping mechanism. So we really do not have a category for it. And since it's only one item, and there's no immediate theme that we can come up with, we leave it there as it is for the time being. And as we review the literature more, maybe you're going to find other outcomes, including mental health outcomes. And as we add those additional outcomes to our structure, we can revisit it. And if we feel that this particular outcome, body image concerns, then can be put together with other specific outcomes within a category, we can do that. We can and should do that. One of the principles of this process is that we should always be looking to reevaluate our structure as more information becomes available and as we start seeing the literature in a different way. And suddenly we're no longer dealing with the 5 bullet points all at the same level. We're mapping a structure. We've got theme, subtheme, subtheme of subtheme. In this instance, we moved on from a 2-level structure to a 5-level structure using the same information. We have not added any information. This is how we shift from just collecting references to building frameworks. And the magic happens when you apply this to multiple sources. A word of advice here. It's important to add the references as you go, because the plan is to add more sources to the structure. You can either add the reference to a higher level theme, which is what we have here, or alternatively, because it's likely that we will be finding additional subthemes, I would add the reference to the lower levels. If you're finding this video helpful and want more guided examples like this, I've developed a lot more videos where I go deep into literature analysis, also step by step and with real examples. You'll find the link to the virtual tutor resource in the description below. And as you've probably noticed, I'm really passionate about helping students to do better literature analysis. So if you would like my personalized support, you can find details by clicking on the link also in the description below, or go to the Dissertation Academy website. Many students stop at stage 4, but there is one more vital step to complete before you can write your review. And this is because the real power of theming does require this one more step, when you start pulling in other authors. And you do this by probing the literature, which is step 5. As we develop our analytical structure, we can also ask questions. If we start with the outcomes theme, we can ask the question, what other outcomes besides mental health outcomes are out there? I actually went to read the paper where the student took these 5 mental health outcomes from, and the authors talk about 2 other types of outcomes: physical health outcomes and job health outcomes. So we can add that to our structure. So suddenly, instead of having just one subtheme of outcomes, we've got 3 types of outcomes. Now we need to add the references. And when reading the paper, I actually realized that Meyer quotes Waldo, 1999, as the author of the 3 types of outcomes, the mental health, physical health, and job health outcomes. This means that he was not the one who came up with the 3 types of outcomes. And what I would do, I would add Waldo as the reference, or maybe both, because in this instance, Waldo is the original author, or seems to be the original author, but Meyer also endorses it, and therefore we would have 2 different sources backing up the 3 types of outcomes. So let's add that information to the structure. So we've got Waldo 999 and Meyer 2003. And what we do next is to just copy that and paste it there. We could continue probing the analytical structure. If we focus on the emotion outcomes theme, do other authors talk about emotional outcomes? What do they say about them, including types or specific outcomes? Let's say that I read a paper which also mentioned depression as an outcome. In this case, I would simply add a reference because the theme is already in the structure. The hypothetical reference is Smith and Peterson 2021. And then we read a paper which identifies anger as the outcome. Anger is also an emotion, but in this instance, we don't have it in our structure. What we do is to add it as a subtheme to the emotional outcomes bullet point together with the reference. Let's do that. So what we add is anger, and let's assume that the reference is Brian et al. 2000 and let's say 19. Okay, so as we read more, we keep adding either more references to back up the themes that we already have there, or we add more themes and the corresponding reference. The thing is, with every new source, your structure gets richer. And when you've added enough references to the structure, and you're happy that you have developed your interpretation of the literature, the next and final step is fairly straightforward. These are some of the questions you can ask the literature. I have actually created a video specifically about this step, probing the literature when doing analysis, which features in the virtual tutor resource, with a shorter version also featuring in the free literature review masterclass. Step 6 is about writing analytically. And once you've developed your analytical structure, you can write on top of it. Let's see how it works in practice. So we've got our structure here, and I'm going to start writing on top of it. So the literature on minority stressors has focused on outcomes, and 3 types of outcomes have been identified. Mental health, physical health, I'm going to remove that, and job health outcomes. So straight away, we've got our starting point. Now, we have a lot of themes around one of these outcomes, mental health. So the rest, because we haven't done more work, the rest is going to be about mental health outcomes. So we can say, as far as mental health, we don't even need to write this actually, we've got it there. As far as mental health outcomes, 3 types have been uncovered in the literature. The first type is emotional outcomes and includes, and now I literally don't need to do much other than bring the information that is already in our structure. So we do that, and then do that, low moods, stress, anxiety, and anger. See how quickly I am able to write? The second refers to body image concerns, and the third type to coping mechanisms, which have been classified into positive and negative. We don't need that anymore because we already have included it at the beginning. So if I remove the bullet points, this is the text that we would have ended up with, or something like this. As you can see, it took, I don't know, a minute, 2 minutes maximum to turn our bulleted point structure into meaningful text. And this text is of high quality because it meets the criteria of analysis. There are two main characteristics of analytical writing. The first one is that it is theme-based rather than author-based. Author-based is for description. And the second one is that we see some of the themes supported by more than one author, so 2 or more authors. And we have both features of analysis present in our text. The benefits of this process: it's your structure, your analysis, your voice. By becoming good at the structured analysis, you'll be demonstrating that you understand the literature deeply and can draw meaningful insights from it. And I invite you to practice using your own sources. Start small by breaking down just 1 or 2 papers, and then build your structure from there by adding more papers. Keep practicing, keep improving the structure. And remember, lists describe, but themes analyze. If you want to know more about what it takes to move from a descriptive literature review to a critical literature review, I break down that in this video, and YouTube thinks you will like this one. Thanks for watching.